Hey guys, I want to talk to you about customizing your ZBrush. I'm sure you've seen a lot of different looking UIs out there if you're looking at different tutorials or tips online, and maybe wondering how you could accomplish that, how to make ZBrush your own, put buttons on the, on the desktop here that you might want to use more often, or take ones away that you don't see yourself really using. So let's go ahead and show you how to do that. So I just opened ZBrush here. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to hide this. You can either click this button here or press the comma, I believe is the hotkey to hide that. There we go. And so this is, at least with ZBrush 2019, the default UI. This is what it looks like. So there's a bunch of things on here that I'm sure you recognize and like a bunch of them, and then there's some that you probably haven't used too much or don't plan on using, or you wish there was other things here. One way we could customize it pretty much instantly is up in the top right. There's these little boxes kind of laid on top of each other next to this little lock. By clicking either of these, it's kind of going to cycle through default preloaded UIs. So if I click one, it's going to go, and it's going to, you can see it right over here. It says this is the compact UI that's loaded. Click it again, it changes. Now it's one called brush materials, and we have these brushes on the bottom. And these are all going to be good starting points. It's default one, left, right, shelf. It's legacy, minimal. So this one you could really get creative and put whatever you want there. It might be a good one to start with if you know exactly what you want to add there. Here's a sculpt one. This is a popular one because it kind of gives you more space to work with in the center. And as we keep going, we kind of cycle back around to what we started with. So, okay, so the first thing we would want to do is find one that's closest to what we like and what we might want to use. So in this case, I'm just going to start with maybe the sculpt one, because I like that it's smaller on the sides, because these are a little too big for me. It gets rid of this stuff too, so make sure you're familiar with what these things are, if there's any that you want to keep. And everything that you saw there is available in these menus up top too. So nothing is really lost. If you know the name of it, you could hunt it down. So first thing is we'll find one that we like. And you could toggle these dividers by double clicking them to get rid of them or give yourself more space. And they're on each side. And you could use those as space to put things. Oopsies. So how do we start customizing this? The first thing we want to do is go into Preferences, Config, and right here, Enable Customize. Now, we got to remember that this is on when we're using it, because we need to make sure we turn it back off, and we need to make sure that we save our changes in order to make sure we don't lose anything that we just did. So when we toggle this on, you're going to notice everything is going to kind of shrink a little. So the bottom came up a little, the top moved down, the side, it came in just a tiny bit. It's going to give you room to kind of place things. But that's how you tell Enable Customize is on. So if you're dragging things around and then you're wondering why there's all this extra space, it's probably because you haven't toggled this back off. So first thing we do is keep that on. Now, from here, it's really a matter of holding Control, holding Alt, and then dragging a UI element. And you see it could kind of snap to different positions. So I might want to move focal shift over there, or I might not want it, and I could drag it into the document and it's going to disappear. Now, what if we want that back? Okay, well, we know it's in Draw, Focal Shift. Same thing, we hold Control, we hold Alt, and we're going to drag that in. And there we go. And so from here, you could see, you could pretty much move things wherever you want. If I want Edit to be on top, I liked it up there before, you could just drag it right into the top. I lost that one. Go back to Draw. Oh no. Oh no, where was Edit? So this will happen where you pick something out and you're like, wait a second. How am I gonna? So this is something you have to be prepared for, is that if you're gonna be editing, you need to make sure you know where these things are. And if not, then you're gonna be on the hunt. So Edit is actually in Transform. And there's a lot of commands here that might not be in the most obvious spot or you don't know where to look for them, transform has a lot of the good stuff here as far as like soloing things or changing your pivot, ghosting so you can see through things, move, scale, rotate. These are all really important ones. So I'm going to bring edit back out here. And then from here, I want you to think about what tools you use the most often and then try to bring them out here. So for an example, I like to use a color palette to pick colors with. And so the one that was there is kind of missing, and I want one to be quickly available. Now, while I work, sometimes I'll press space, and then this will come up and you have a couple of these. But you could also go into color modifiers, and you'll have multiple to choose from. So you're like, oh, okay, what kind of stands out to you? What are you going to find useful? And you could kind of highlight one, Control Alt, and then drag it and place it on your workspace. And so now this is going to add a little more space because it is bigger. So we might want to be a little more careful about where we put these. Maybe you want it on the side or on the bottom. But there's also thinner ones too. So if we go back to color, there's like these. Well, that's not much thinner, huh? I thought you could have them a little separate. But you have some colors and different gradients and stuff to work with here. So individual RGB, that kind of thing. So outside of that, what might we want to put on here? Well, one thing we like to use a lot is brushes. And here, it can get a little confusing at first. So I'm going to go ahead and let's pretend that these aren't down here already, because the starting point we used kind of had a bunch of brushes here, which is one reason I like it. But maybe you use a brush that's not down here. Like for instance, I like to use H polish a lot. Well, in order to drag that down here, we actually need to select the brush first because we want a small version of this. So if we just press B to bring up our brushes, well, I guess we have to be in, let's go to a tool. Just going to drag this out, make it a polymesh. Edit mode, there we go. So now we can access our brushes. So if I press B, we have a bunch of brushes here. And so the way I like to work to get these into my UI is I'll find the one I want. So in this case, H polish. So I'm gonna press H. And I think that's the only hotkey for that one. Yeah, so it appears here. So I could drag this one, I believe, but I like to use the smaller ones because they're more consistent with the bottom. So by selecting it, it's now in this more recents kind of list, and I can Control Alt drag it, and now I have H polish there as well. And so that's another way you can do it, for instance, with like matte caps. You might want to, and you could find those up here at material. Maybe you want to have a couple matte caps on quick order. For instance, let's just go with basic material 2. Same thing, I'll go back to material. Here it is, Control Alt drag. And now I can quickly switch to basic material 2. I can have that one be matte cap, the red wax, and then this one be a different material. And now we can switch quickly between those. And so get creative with your UI and think about how you're working. If you see yourself repeating a lot of things pretty often, it might be good to bring them in there. Another example is deformation. Maybe you're mirroring things a lot. Just go ahead and drag it right from that palette, and now we could have mirror there. Maybe we want something like inflate. If we use that a lot with our masks, boom, just drag that in there. And you could see very quickly, we could kind of build up, I want lazy mouse toggle. You can kind of build up your UI and make it about what you use pretty often. And that way you don't have to menu dive as much. So this can be very handy, and there's a lot of stuff in here. So go through the UI here and look for things that you'll find useful or things that you already know you use a lot, and it'll help you save time. Something, what else here might I use? The solo. That was in the other UI, I believe, but it's not here. So I could bring that out, and now I could toggle that easily. And then when we're done, go back to Enable Customize, click it again, and boom. Now, if we want to save this, first thing I usually do is hit store config, but then I'll also do save UI. So store config will kind of bake it into your startup. So whenever you open ZBrush, this should pop up. And save UI will let you save a file out. That way, if anything happens, or if you go to another computer, you can kind of back it up. So I like to do both. I'll just do store config followed by save UI, and then I'll label it like maybe my workspace 2019 or something like that. And that way you could share it with friends, keep it in case something happens where you lose your scene, you could bring it back. But that way you could kind of have it. There's a couple other things I want to touch on really quick. One is that you'll notice when you go through these, while you're working normally too, you might notice when you click one of them, the other one's kind of auto contract. So now subtool is closed when I open geometry. And maybe I want them both open at the same time because this could be kind of annoying, especially when you're trying to do hotkey stuff. So what you can do is go to Preferences, Interface, and then Palettes. Right here it has open or one open subpalette. If you uncheck that, now you can have as many open as you want at a time. It might get a little cluttered, but at least this way you can decide which ones you want open and which ones you want closed. So every now and again, I will turn that on because it really is kind of handy. Now, the other thing to be aware of is that any one of these where you see this little icon to the side, this little circle with the arrow pointing out of it, if you click on it, that's going to dock to the side of your screen. And so this could be handy too if you want something, for instance, your lighting. You could just tap that button and then boom, it's going to be on the side so you don't have to constantly pop this open, or if there's too many things to normally store around your UI, that's an easy way to do that. And then you could tap it again to get rid of it. I believe you could also put it on the other side if you wish by clicking and dragging it. And so that way you could have something on the left and the right, wherever you want. And now collapse those down by double clicking again. And the last thing really quick, while you're looking through all these, you might be confused as to what certain buttons do. And this goes for brushes, pretty much anything on the UI. These UI elements here, on the side, brushes, whichever. What you can do, I'm going to pull this back to the other side, is hold Control, and it's going to give you this pop-up that teaches you about whatever you're hovering over. And it's not there for everything, but it's there for enough things that it's really worth the time to look if you're confused just by holding Control and then seeing what it has to say about it. Because you could learn what each function does. And if not, it'll usually refer to you to kind of a toolpath that you could Google or look in their manual and kind of understand what it does. So there you go. Make sure you save and make sure you store it out there. And have fun customizing UI. Find some online if you want to start from there. And you could always, if you don't like how it came out and you want to start over, you could always go back to config and then restore standard UI. And it brings us right back to where we started. There you go. Now, as a quick addendum before I forget, a lot of you are probably wondering why there's so much gray space around the outside, or that it's happened to you and you're wondering what you can do about it. So one way to fix this, and this can depend on the size of your monitor. So ours, I'm using a wide one, so it's giving us some dead space. It's an easy fix. You go up to Document, make sure W size is selected. Now you see it says auto fit window size. And if I hit New Document, I'm gonna hit no. I'm not gonna save the changes in this case. And all of a sudden, it's filling up all the space. And so, whenever I start a new project, I'll like to do that just in case. I think you could store it as well with your config with the rest of your UI. So when you finish customizing your UI, give that a shot. Otherwise, now you know how to activate it. And if you're in the middle of a project and you notice that, well, if you have something out and it's being edited, as long as it's a tool, it's still a tool, and you do that, you can still drag it back out and you'll still have all your progress. Just remember to press T again to go into edit mode. So you don't have to like completely close ZBrush and then do it if you're in the middle of working on something. As long as you have your tool on the side and it's saved, you could just drag it out again, hit T, and now you have a lot more screen space.